with somebody like a Bo-Katan or with somebody like an Ellie, not so much Ellie, Abby in The Last of Us, these are clearly fantasy women. Bo-Katan's hair stays perfect under that helmet. Of course, she's a fantasy woman. But there comes a time where it becomes so specific and so obviously idealized that it's like this uncanny valley of girl power you can slingshot around, where it lacks the awareness of what it means to be a woman that has to make hard decisions. And when you've got a guy like Filoni or Druckmann that has never been on the receiving end of just how many people line up to sandbag you, you get these things where it's like, of course people are going to revolt. Whereas with Yennefer, I think there was a bit more that she tried so hard to make her knowable and likable so that she wasn't seen as all those things, that, people weren't just lying down at her feet. She still had to take from the powerful. Like you said, she didn't want to pay taxes. So, but, she was seen as a witch. There was still a consequence in The Witcher. It was hackneyed and bad, but there was still a consequence in a way that you don't see with Abby, you don't see with Bo-Katan. And they just tried so hard to force the player to like these women instead of giving them the choice not to and coming to it.
Yeah. And so, like, what I was saying, it's like, obviously, if you have a male showrunner and a female showrunner, they are going to handle things differently.
Right.
But I do think there is this idea that is being pushed of centering the female character and making her the important one because pop feminism. And it's like, you get the guys who are like, oh yes, I'm going to prove that I'm good, but then you also get the women who have kind of, I hesitate to say bought into it, but they are on board with it.
Yeah.
And I want to be clear, I'm not talking about feminism as a concept. Can I say healthy feminism? I don't know what else
choice
to say.
Feminism, what just not the brainworms.
Yeah. So we do get these brainworms where it's like, oh, well, we need to tell women's stories. We need to do this and that, which I agree with, but they also tend to come at it in a way that is this women can do no wrong. And so if a woman does it, it's fine. Like coming back to that situation with Yennefer sexually assaulting pretty much an entire town.
Right.
Well, not an entire town. So there is this double standard that has emerged. And I think we do get, because Hollywood is very left leaning and because they see that this is it's a talking point in culture and they are seeing that there's a push for this, so they bring kind of their own toxicity to it because Hollywood is toxic on its own. So I think more than a conspiracy theory of, oh, they're pushing woke feminism, I think it's people coming in who they have this pop feminism understanding, or they have male guilt where they feel like, oh, I need to prove I'm better. Yeah. So
definitely.
I think they're coming at it with the same ideology. And this is why I say, even if we have, like, Jen Gao is one thing with She-Hulk, because Jen Gao came from something like Rick and Morty.
Right.
And so she very clearly brought that and the idea of the hot mess. So I consider that more of an exception that proves a rule, because I do think if we had more shows that did have a female showrunner and had this, I think we would still see this happening. But I think it's handled in different ways depending on it. Because it's like with history, like you said, we got this fan fiction of Yennefer, where it's, oh, well, I see myself in Yennefer. Don't say that.
No. Yennefer does not exist in this world. Yennefer's a fantasy character.
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw another thing in the mix because I think this might be the missing piece of this. Like you said, there's this focus on centering women. And I have always had an issue with this, especially in gaming. And come to bury Caesar, not to praise her moment. Feminist frequencies folded. And one of the things they did that I think sucked so bad was counted the number of female playable characters. Hear me out here. Look at Jane Foster versus Darcy in the original Thor. Give me a quotable line that Jane says in that entire fucking movie.
Thank you.
Exactly. And we can all think of Darcy, and she gets the meow meow line, right? Now, no matter
and I have seen that movie many times, and yet that is still the first line for Jane that popped into my head.
Thank you. Yeah. It is a lot because usually the female-centered character is somebody's wife, mother, daughter, love interest, and we are stuck in the idea that a female lead has to be quote unquote likable. Stick a pin in Captain Marvel. Hear me out here. The secondary characters are allowed to have those great character moments. This is why I brought up Darcy instead of Jane.
And this actually leads into a point I want to talk about. Yeah. So finish your thought, and then I'm going to bring it.
Olivia Colman steals Secret Invasion. She is such a joy in that show, what is kind of dreary and not very joyful. But if she were the lead, she'd have all this shit on her shoulders. It was Agatha all along. Wink. You can only do that as a supporting character where the entire show is not on your shoulders. And in video games, I point to the Far Cry series. It does not matter the gender of the playable character in those series because it's always the villain on the box. Think about it. It's Michael Mando and Vas Montenegro in Far Cry 3. He's on the box.
Yeah.
He's not the hero. He's not the playable character. He's the first antagonist. He ain't even the final boss.
That's why it was so weird when that one Far Cry cover was box art was released.
Yeah.
And it's you had the guy with his very clearly in villain posing, and he had like a POC kneeling in front of him, and people freaked out of white supremacy, and it's like
he's the villain. It's always the villain. It's always the villain on the Far Cry box art. Always.
And I didn't even know that, but when I looked at the picture, I'm like, this is a villain.
Yeah, it's Pagan Min in Far Cry 4, which problematic because he's Asian and voiced by Troy Baker. That they knew they shouldn't do that at the time. I don't know why they did it, but not Troy Baker's fault. And then it's the white supremacist guy. Well, they did a whole Last Supper thing for that game, but still the villains, not the playable character. And then it's Giancarlo Esposito. And I don't even remember the name of the character from Far Cry 6 because he's always Gus Fring in my mind. He's Giancarlo Esposito. He was great in the very limited parts he had, but the villain in those stories is always more important in terms of lasting character because they're first-person games. It's the same thing with the original Arkham Asylum. Mark Hamill's Joker is way more important to that game than Batman in terms of characterization. So feminist frequency's insistence on counting the number of female leads in things. Actors don't care whether they are the lead so much as they care that it's a good character. I mean, Matt Smith is not the lead in House of the Dragon.
But oh boy, was he the one everyone remembered.
Well, because he was able to do really interesting things. The same way Yennefer is able to do interesting things, because if you don't like her, you can decide you like Triss, and vice versa. If you don't like Triss, you can decide you like Yennefer. It's the same thing with, if you think of sort of one of the things that was really lacking in Quantumania was they sidelined the support characters from the first two Ant-Man films, and they were really good. Part of what makes the Spider-Man, the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies so good is the supporting cast. You know, MJ and Ned, and they can be people in a way that, especially a female lead who has to be everything to everyone, because my God, they tried to do the complicated thing with both Daenerys and She-Hulk, and people lost their fucking shit. Like, why anybody thought Daenerys was an angelic good person, it confuses the fuck out of me. She put a whole bunch of people on pikes. Season 2,
there are a lot of people, and I think that show was big on Tumblr, surprisingly.
Yeah, shock
and
there.
So there were a lot of the Tumblrinas who absolutely loved Daenerys, and it didn't matter what she was doing because she was a woman, and that made everything okay.
But I mean, Emilia Clarke clearly played her as bug fuck nuts. She just, I mean, and there's reasons for it. But
okay, but media literacy is not a common skill, I have unfortunately learned.
Oh, absolutely. But still, that was a show that gave it to people, and they missed it. I couldn't believe the freaking out with that. I mean, it was rushed. The pacing sucked, but I would have been disappointed if she turned out to be good girl fairy tale princess. That is not what Mother of Dragons implies. Like, if people didn't see her burning it all down, they were not paying attention. And that's the thing. Nobody got upset that, Arya did some pretty despicable things, because she wasn't the princess that was supposed to be good and virtuous and likable. And everybody loved Cersei being horrible and then getting hers, because she wasn't, she wasn't the Madonna. She wasn't the innocent. She wasn't the good girl that everybody wants to win. They were allowed to have edges, even Brienne of Tarth.
Yeah. And I think there was these people who would overlook what she did. It's like, oh, well, she killed these people who are bad people.
Well, that was the dodge, but it was still mass murder.
Well, yes, but I think there were people, especially, who have this mentality of, oh, if a woman does it, it's fine.
Well, that was what people read into She-Hulk, that the show was not trying to do.
No,
yet they do believe that everything that comes out of a woman's mouth is validated by the show.
And here's the thing, I do think there are people who believe that. Yeah. That whatever a woman does is fine.
Yeah.
I don't think we can.
There are those people that say, yeah, maybe Amber Heard did hit Johnny Depp, but I'm sure she had her reasons. Like,
well, exactly. And so I think we had a lot of people who idolized Daenerys, and so they were like, oh, well, it's a dark fantasy and the men are doing these things, and, well, they're slavers, and especially when it was slavery, because that's a hot topic for intersectional feminism in a lot of ways. And, well, they're slavers and they're rapists and they're this and that. And so they could justify it. They could say, oh, well, and they might not in their heads be thinking, oh, she's a woman, she can do no wrong, but that's what the mentality has become, and that's where it's gotten to, until you get to the point where she's killing innocents, and then it was so much that they were like, no, wait, fuck. And I think it revealed a lot about people, but like you said, it's all there in the story.
She's the poster girl for Stockholm Syndrome. She fell in love with her rapist.
Yeah, which
okay, technically it wasn't rape, they were married, but still, the way they inverted that from the book, it's like she was broken from the beginning her own brother was molesting her. Like,
Yeah,
why did you expect her to be normal?
Yeah, no, it like I said, media literacy is not very common.
Yeah.
But it's so because we do have these people, and it does show up in Hollywood where it's women can do no wrong no matter what they do. And then you got something like She-Hulk where people are like, oh, well, it must be saying this, and they misinterpreted it based on misconceptions.
Yeah, because I didn't think in that scene that everybody freaked out about. The reason that line is funny is she's insisting, I got this, I don't need her help, I got this. And I'm sitting here going, yeah, that's what every person who doesn't admit that they have PTSD yet says. And because that whole scene was about dialectical behavioral therapy, and we all know, Bruce Banner's seen some shit, I thought he was supposed to be the sympathetic one there.
And I think people are so jaded from the whole culture war and everything.
Well, coming right off of Captain Marvel, which she was kind of terrible, and there was more of a Captain Marvel was an experiment that just didn't work.
With that, we see the fans of the movie who justify the things she did as girl power.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, for me, she was completely unlikable. And she was a jerk.
I think what they were aiming for with that movie was that she didn't know who she was, because her whole background was not available to her. And interesting experiment. Brie Larson did what she was directed to do. Again, not her fault, but it just didn't work. When you're the first female Marvel lead in a movie, you gotta have some sizzle, you gotta have some panache. And I'd rather she been, this is the problem they have with Hal Jordan too in Green Lantern, is that they managed to make him boring, even though he's a fighter pilot. Those folks are adrenaline junkies. I mean, mentioned Akila again this recording, but Akila's ex-military. And she says some things that, yeah, there's the military coming out. We needed more of that in Carol Danvers. We needed her, the fact that she was a pilot, like a crack pilot, to be more of her character, instead of woman who doesn't know who she is.
Yeah.
Why is it always, I know I've ranted about this before, but why is it always the struggle for identity in these Marvel women? It's always, who am I? It's like they're just making Mulan again and again and again and again.
But not doing it well.
No. Yeah, and I mean,
even when Disney remade Mulan, they couldn't remake Mulan well.
And I do think that in the current climate, like if Rey had been in Star Wars, if Rey had been a supporting character that was there to, like, almost as a point of view to interact with Leia, interact with Luke, I think people really would have warmed to her. It was the fact that these new characters were all shoved in our face, and the only one who really kind of stuck was the guy who's supposed to be off in the first movie, Poe Dameron. Instead of going, okay, we're gonna introduce these characters slowly, see how it goes, make it actually a legacy experience, knowing that what people are coming into this movie for is the original cast. We're gonna backdoor it. The way they did with Spider-Man in Civil War, because they knew they were coming off of Andrew Garfield, which suffered from people still not being over Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, because he was the first in movies and people don't like change. I mean, that's an important thing to remember. Fans don't like change.
I think part of it also is we did not need another Spider-Man origin story.
Right.
And
yeah. Well, I actually think that there's an example of, they had great chemistry. Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone, that's her name, right?
Yeah.
People, I didn't see the second movie because I didn't want to see what the dead Stacy. I just didn't want to see her die. I knew what was coming, and I didn't want to see it.
Mm-hmm.
It was stupid. For again, you've got a partnership that works. You've got people with chemistry. Don't throw it away. And
especially so here's the thing. Shailene Woodley was supposed to be introduced as MJ in that second movie, but they had to cut her stuff, so that movie got a lot of editing.
Interesting.
And
but
so
I mean,
it was
I didn't want to see it. I wanted one more movie.
No. And even I'm like, why would you do that? And
I see Mary Jane, and I brought this up before, but maybe we can pivot to this because I think this is a good one to land on.
Well, there's
I think that people don't understand the importance of characters like Lois Lane and Mary Jane, who are non-superpowered love interests in fiction. I should probably close off the whole thing I was saying about the pressure, the counting of female main characters, because the characters people end up loving are these secondary characters who just get to have panache. Think of all the characters from Breaking Bad or from Game of Thrones, or they're secondary characters. I mean, Peter Dinklage, I don't think was supposed to be a big romantic lead as the thing started. He just blew everybody else off the screen. When you have this, everybody loves a great character part, like as actors, oh my God, that's the shit. Because you don't have to be as naked, for one. And let's face it, for women, that is a consideration as somebody who's done it. No matter how, but how about, oh no, it's in service of the art, it's part of the story. You're gonna get a fucker like Seth MacFarlane who gets up at the office and goes, we've seen your boobs. It's a consideration that men don't have to deal with. There's more and more male nudity, but it's not seen as that frat boy shit, because those frat boys are going, nobody wants to see that. See it. Sorry, boys. Women, straight women and gay men exist. So that's one of the problems with that particular type of feminist frequency feminism, making it as if the lead is the only female character that matters. Completely short-sighted, especially in video games, where often the playable character is a cipher that you barely even see. It's the secondary characters and the main villain that really bring the flavor to the game. But then you've got the love interest character that I am so unpopular when I'm in development meetings, because I'm often the only woman or one of two women, and they'll bring up, okay, so he's this, and then he's got his best friend, and then he's got his mentor, and then he's got his enemy, and then he's got his love interest. Okay, what's she do? She's the love interest. What does she do? Why is she right for him? Well, she's the love interest. They have absolutely nothing tangible about her. She is literally just a trophy. You had Silver Age, well, Lois Lane's golden age. But you had Lois Lane, who is, she's a reporter. Holy shit, in 1939, that was a big deal, and apparently they wanted her to find out Superman's identity early, and DC said no. Schuster wanted that because they wanted her to be a partner. And if you think about the pulp stuff, like The Shadow, that had happened before Superman totally changed pop culture, the women, the Girl Fridays, they were very dynamic. They were very smart and capable, and Lois Lane comes out of that tradition. But then you've got Mary Jane, who I think holds a very special place in comics lore just because she's based on Stan Lee's wife.
I also think she is Marvel's equivalent to Lois Lane.
Oh, she is.
Including getting bashed just as much, although for different reasons. Because people are like, "Oh, how did Lois not realize it was him just because of the glasses?" Have you ever seen someone when they change their hair and take off or put on glasses?
I had that happen once. I was there to do a hosting gig at a concert, and I always bring my clothes with me to put on. One, because contact lenses fry your eyes, and I want as minimal time as possible. But also, if you drink, I'm a coffee addict, so if you drink coffee and you spill it on it, you don't spill it on your wardrobe, you spill it on your street clothes. Nobody gives a fuck, right? And so I showed up, and my glasses at the time were pretty thick. They're men's frames now. But I show up and not a ton of makeup, but mostly just the glasses that were different. And I sat down and I listened to these two guys talking about me. Yeah, she's supposed to be here by now. Where the hell is she, man? Like and they were talking about me, and they turned around and I waved and smiled at them, and they looked at me and went right back to talking about me. They didn't recognize me because I was wearing glasses.
And like we've had enough skits on late night shows and stuff about actors doing costume contact tests and stuff like that, and not being recognized, that people are starting to realize, oh no, that's not as stupid as it sounds. And to on me, paper.
It was more, you're not looking for Superman to have a regular life. He's an alien. You expect him to be doing alien things in an alien place.
And even like the 90s Lois and Clark show, it was very clear that he could have told her, "I'm Superman," and taken off his glasses, and she still wouldn't have seen it right away.
Right.
Because she's built up Superman in her head. And I thought, that show is campy and kind of dumb, but at the same time, for the 90s, I think it was well done.
It was the 90s. I think she was a better Lois than he was a Superman, but it was designed to be it was designed to be a Lois led. That's why it's Lois and Clark, her name's first. So she did a good job. I liked her as a Lois Lane.
Yeah, Terry Hatcher was absolutely delightful as Lois Lane, and she did kind of the prototypical hot mess in a way, but it was also kind of like, no, this is not great.
She was good, but I mean, Mary Jane's not. Mary Jane is the way I have always pictured MJ. Is that it's not that she's, it's not that she's drop dead flawless. To him, she's the most beautiful woman in the world. And so that's how she's depicted.
Here is my thing with MJ. And I know I've talked about this a bit before, but this is my sticking point, is Marvel and a lot of the people who write her do not understand her backstory, or they just don't know.
Which backstory? Because they've changed it a few times.
Oh, the basic backstory of unlike the Sam Raimi movies, people, she is not, I say trailer trash just because like that's what I read. With like the slamming screen door and everything.
Oh, there was definitely a dad's a mean drunk vibe.
And it's, her father was a mean drunk, but he was not lounging around on the sofa. And even I read the novelization of the first movie, and you very clearly got the impression that it's wife beater, tank top. No. Her father was an English professor.
Right.
And he was trying to write the next great American novel, but he had knocked up his girlfriend in high school. And so they got married, and her mother worked to put him through school, back when you could afford, back when school was cheap enough, you could do that.
Really common back when.
Oh, yeah. It's so common.
My mother did that for my biological father. And you know what? It did make some men bitter.
Oh,
It
very.
hurt their pride that,
And so her father resented having children, and MJ wasn't the one born from the knockup. It was her older sister, Gail.
Right.
And so her father would resent them because, they took away his future and his life, and he's saddled with a wife and kids, and the kids are crying, and her older sister was a dancer, and so like her classes cost money, and they would cry, and he couldn't write. He was probably a terrible writer anyway. We know the type.
Right.
And so her mother took the abuse, even the physical abuse, until the day her father hit Gail. Right. And she said, nope, you can't hit my kids, which again, very common story. Takes her kids, they start moving around and living with different family members, couch surfing, essentially. And eventually they settled with one uncle who, like, he was kind of more of what the father we see in the movie. He was an iron worker, I believe, steel worker.
Right.
And so he gave them a place to live, but he was still very strict. And then Gail got knocked up by her boyfriend, but her boyfriend was a star athlete, and he had still wanted to go to college, but with the wife and kid, he wasn't able to. So like he didn't get his football scholarship or any of this. And MJ was looking at him and going, oh, that's the same look my father had. Yeah. I see this caged look in his eyes. And it terrified her, and she knew it wasn't going to work. So Gail had her baby. Gail and her husband started fighting. Gail then got pregnant, and she's like, Mom, you have to come help me. I can't handle this. Because then when she got pregnant the second time, her husband walked out.
Right.
So MJ and her mom move in with her sister to help her. Her mom dies, and her sister says, okay, MJ, I'm going to need your help more than ever. And MJ, who's like 16, 17 at this point, is like, nope. And she walks away, goes to stay with her Aunt Anna, who is, of course, Peter and Aunt May's next door neighbor. And this is when Anna and Aunt May start trying to set them up. But the thing is, MJ never let people know what was going on at home. She would play the class clown. She was the one who, there's one particular scene in one of the comics where she's telling this story, and it's like, MJ, come help wash the dishes. I can't. I just painted my nails flamingo red.
Yeah.
And so it's very much, she's the party girl to cover up just how much she's hurting. Yeah. And this is something a lot of people forget. And so she's already a really good actress. And that's something that the show, all the comics and movies have forgotten, is she's a great actress, really. And so that's her goal. She wants to be an actress. The supermodel is just kind of something that she does because acting isn't paying bills, essentially.
I wasn't thrilled about the supermodel element of it, but they wanted to give her something to do. I get that. I mean, they wanted to make her idealized, and I like the actress element precisely because of what you said. The supermodel thing, I don't see Mary Jane as that kind of, because they were 6 feet tall and square jawed. The actual supermodels, that was men not quite understanding what the supermodel phenomenon was.
And I mean, there clearly is a bit of a fantasy element to that. I feel like the only time her acting was ever taken seriously was in the J. Michael Straczynski run, where she got to be in an off-Broadway play. But then, of course, One More Day happened, and then when Bendis was writing the ultimate line, he had MJ go, well, I used to want to be an actress, but now, I think I want to be a teacher. And then at some point that turned into journalism because when I said,
because that's not Lois Lane at all.
Yeah. And I'm like, when I said she's Marvel's equivalent of Lois Lane, that didn't mean she needed to be Lois Lane.
Yeah. I mean, the truth is that journalism is about the worst profession for a superhero now because the hours are so long.
Oh, yeah.
So that, I mean, changing Peter to a scientist, that worked. But yeah, I didn't mind. I liked that scene in, what was it, Spider-Man 3, where Mary Jane had gotten a bad review and Peter's just so fucking checked out that he doesn't notice it. That was a moment I actually thought they got the struggle of the character right, because there's this is going to be hard to put into words. There's this disrespect for non-superpowered supporting characters, going back to talking about the Flash and Iris.
There really is.
Yeah, and I think that's a mistake. I mean, you see it in the Wonder Woman movies where they had to have Steve Trevor doing the cool, which they would never feel required to have a female love interest in something like that. Oh no, he's got to have his own stuff to do. No, it would be Vicky Vale screaming again and again and again in the original Batman. And the fact that he flew the fucking plane just was like, what the shit? That was when I determined Patty Jenkins was just tired and had no fight left in her anymore, because she must have been so done fighting to get that movie made to miss why that was a problem. Wonder Woman being a co-pilot, in like a passenger in the plane in that scene, that was just so messed up. It's okay to be a support class character. That's important. And especially with all the tragedy that Peter experiences, having someone who understands him, having someone he can rely on is so important. And this dumb shit giving her superpowers, just, to me,
no, it completely undermines the character.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. So there is this trend of, oh, everyone needs to have a superpower. And going back to, ironically, The Incredibles, when everyone's super, no one is. Yeah. And it also undermines the character. And it also undervalues. And here's the thing. This is, how do I say this properly? It is a very feminine position to care for people. I don't think it's misogynistic to say that.
That is caring, compassion. They're seen as traditionally feminine traits. Whether that's right or not is besides the point.
And I do think that is a natural part of femininity. Personally, like, I'm not saying all women feel that. Hi, Liana.
Thank you. I feel seen. But yeah, no, you're right. I mean, that's the thing, is that we incorporate. I mean, this is when I do think that masculine privilege or a hierarchy does come into play, right?
Well, here's the thing. I said that, and then I had a realization. You care for people so much that you started doing Liana Cares.
Yeah, I still hate that name, but it was a working title. But no, but it's a different way. It is not a feminine way of caring.
But I think it still speaks to, there is that female instinct that we do tend to see a bit more in how women have evolved as opposed to how men have evolved. And there may be some socialization to it, but I don't think that's entirely it. But so getting back to my point, though, is I don't think it's sexist to have the character who's there and who is the support. And so to say, oh no, she needs powers. So you mean she needs to step into this traditionally masculine role? And
well, it's sexist to discount the importance of those people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, that's where I think feminism is really getting this wrong. And why secondary characters, I'm very glad this backer sponsored this conversation, because we are strangling the feminine, and that's ultimately going to hurt women in the long run, because this is one of the things that I started being fascinated by, not being sex typical. 3 out of 4 women are sex typical. They do, because I don't care in the feminine way. And that's the thing I have to I have to really be aware of, because I have to be aware of how I'm coming across. And the book and video game Yennefer has this. She cares, she cares for Ciri, but she has it in a let's burn the world, be powerful. I'm gonna get all this power so I can protect me and mine. As opposed to the no, I'm gonna be there when the person going out there doing the protector role needs to check out for a bit and needs some support there. And man, as somebody who is that asshole that goes out and busts heads, I really need more people doing that. Like, we need more people who can have that caregiver role with dignity. And the full-blown assault on the feminine is making that role weak. And that not only hurts women who, traditionally we see in places, like Sweden, that have pretty decent wage parity. And so, the thing that confounds feminism is in places that have a fairly high equality, women choose more feminine roles as a rule, because there's no financial reasons not to. So feminism doesn't like talking about that. I have no problem talking about it, because it's like, yeah, that's great for the people that want to do that. What about the 25% that don't? Let's make both valid. But also, I mean, men who do want that, they have to hide. And I'm just not cool with that. And I think that this so-called feminism that insists that women be the lead and don't give dignity to these secondary characters, but also just go hammer and tong after a traditionally feminine character like Mary Jane, are completely missing what all this shit was supposed to do, which is not just advocate for the rights of women. The reason it's feminism and not womanism, the womanism is an alternative thing. Black women are calling themselves womanists now because white feminism is leaving them out. But the defense of the feminine as equally valid is just as important to feminism and equality as women having to be, these Soviet style androgynous super soldiers to be taken seriously. That's bullshit. That is such bullshit, and I'm so tired of it. There's nothing wrong with a character just being a nice girl. You can write them and be interesting. There's a cute cartoon that I'm seeing it on Disney Plus, but it's called The Ghost in Molly McGee.
Oh yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah, they have some really, she's zany, but she's not a tomboy. She's not a normal girl, but she's not a tomboy. And her friends, and she has this one kind of rival, Angela. The whole thing is, it's not Angela, it's Angela, and she's an influencer. But all of them are really well fleshed out. And there's this awkward kind of nerdy girl named Libby who becomes Molly's best friend. And Libby's Jewish. And so they do like her bat mitzvah and a Hanukkah episode, but they're girls. They do have the pink and the stickers and the sparkle stickers, and they embrace that. And sometimes they're more atypical, sometimes they're straight up girly. And I think the success of the Barbie movie is an indication that people are just desperate for it to be okay.
The fact the marketing took off tells me women are starved for pink things. Most women.
What I like about the movie, and we are going to talk about Barbie. I know. I don't count in these. The average woman. I wore pink to Barbie.
Yes.
It was my one pink shirt that I own. It is mosquito resistant, which is an extremely lesbian coded detail, which is hilarious. It was the only one they had in my size, and mosquito proof clothing has to fit. So it's like, whatever, it's just to walk the dog. It's pink. I don't care. But I wore that to the Barbie movie because it actually made me more happy, like almost moved to tears happy to see all these little girls in the theater with their moms wearing matching pink Barbie shirts. Because as much as I love Wonder Woman and the female superheroes, we are always going to be perpetual guests in these worlds. We tried, it's not taking.
And here's the thing. Oh God, I have like 3 big points I still want to hit on.
Yeah, go.
But so this isn't even one of the 3, but it's like I saw someone post, it was something on Twitter where someone was like, when was the last time there was a big blockbuster movie that was made for the female audience? And I think they were talking about Barbie, but someone responded and they put the posters for like Wonder Woman, Captain Marvel, Hunger Games, and something else. And I'm like, but I don't care about any of those because none of those speak to me. Like, I enjoyed
also, let's face it, action format.
Exactly. And I'm like, these are female led, but they're not feminine. And that annoyed me so much. So, but like I said, I've got 3 big points I want to hit before we wrap up. So the first one, I want to jump back to something you were saying about Jane and Darcy.
Right.
In the Thor movies. And that is actually really common in chick flicks.
Yep.
And it's
the fun
yes, you have the sometimes quirky, but in a, oh, I'm such a klutz Bella Swan way.
Yeah.
And she's usually a brunette with brown eyes that are big and and Zoe Deschanel is the first one that comes to mind for some reason.
Okay, I just knew her as part of the manic pixie dream girl wave.
There it is. It's that very manic pixie dream girl thing.
Okay,
but it's this quirky in a way that is, I'm not like other girls, but as someone who is actually not like other girls in a lot of ways, and reads comics, borderline goth, all these alternative things, that's not like other girls. That is, oh my God, you're such a poser.
Well said.
So we get those characters, but like they have to be interesting enough that girls feel validated, but simple enough that any girl can project onto her, which is part of why I hate those characters.
They are also, I mean, the manic pixie dream girl is sort of a spirit guide to a man finding himself, and she can be quite disposable along that journey. The relationship doesn't necessarily work out.
True, but it's like we do see it even in chick flicks, like even, I mean, Legally Blonde is such a good movie. I hate using it as an example, but it is a perfect example for what I'm getting to.
Sure.
Where it's like you have the standard attractive female character, but then she's got the weird, often older, crude friend, which, oh my God, what, Jennifer Coolidge is.
Okay. Yeah.
I think that's
it's the role for the plus size actress in a chick flick. It's what's her name from, was it the Pitch Perfect movies?
Rebel Wilson.
Yeah, there you go.
So it's like that's the one who's actually allowed to be
human,
alternative, and kind of weird. It's like, oh, it's Mia Mia, or what, Rebel Wilson is Fat Amy, or Jennifer Coolidge, and I'm pretty sure that's who it is. God,
the blonde lady.
Yes.
Yeah.
She was in
Love Me Lady.
Yes.
Yeah.
She was in Legally Blonde. She was in Austin Land.
That's her name. Yeah.
So, and it's not anything against her as an actress. It's just that these are the roles she's been given because, like you said, plus size and a bit older. And I hate this quirky friend who, you see it in YA books too, where it's like, oh, this is my best friend. She dresses like a pimp and she steals wine from her mom's cupboard, but we've been friends forever.
Right.
That is a direct description pretty much from one book I read.
I thought that was fairly specific. Yes.
Yeah. And so, but it's like Also, now that I think about it, I've read several young adult books where the best friend was described as dressing like a pimp.
How does one dress like a? Okay,
Big.
You'll have to tell me when we're done. This is just but anyway, because I know actual sex workers. There's no dress code for pimps in real life. But anyway,
Yeah.
but yeah. So I mean, are you getting to the fact that there is this dichotomy between girls boys like and girls who are allowed to be interesting?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's also this, oh my God, I want female characters who are actually unique. But it's, I think one thing when I was thinking about this theme ahead of time was I'm like, okay, how do you go about writing good female characters? You write them the same way you write any other character.
Right.
And like that's kind of what it comes down to is develop them like people. You told that story. I'm talking fast because I'm trying to say so much at this point, but it's like you told that story about being in the development, and it's like, oh, she's the love interest. Okay, well, what does she do? Right. Well, you need to give her something to do. You need to write her as an actual person, right? Because then if you make her interesting and you make her an actual person, one, it will give more for her and the hero to bounce off of when they're talking, and reasons to bond that aren't completely generic. And not just, he likes her because she's attractive, because that's a great message to continue sending
for both binary genders, but also the fact that, like I said, that's why I wanted to define off the top so we could do a good bad test on what makes a good supporting character, because going all the way back to supporting character is a foil for the main character. If there is no meat to the love interest, she says nothing about the main character except he's a shallow dickbag who's only interested in looks. And it's interesting. Sorry, I haven't forgotten about your point. Do you want to make a point, or should I tell this? Because it was a funny exchange on Twitter. I think it was Naomi Paul who was part of this. Yeah.
So I actually have a good example I'm going to bring up, but go ahead and give your example.
Okay, because it was a discussion on Twitter because we were talking about that whole, she's annoying, and then he falls for it. Neither of us can stand that trope of, he calls her annoying and then he falls for her. I'm sorry this is just me, but if you call a woman annoying, you are telling her she is unfeminine, precisely because of this dichotomy that we've identified. And you have to do so much digging yourself out of your hole with any woman with any self-respect that it ain't cute. Let's not encourage guys to do this.
So I just realized you and I are actually looking at this from completely different perspectives. Okay. You're looking at it, I don't know what specific things you're coming from. Like, do you have a specific example?
Well,
or Castlevania?
I have just found the term annoying. It was Castlevania that made me think of it because they did that.
Okay, so
they did it in Loki, and I'm like, argh! And they did it in a few. It's just this thing they seem to do where when a guy likes a girl, he dismisses her as annoying.
Okay, so I was thinking about how that comes up in romance novels, especially like modern contemporary ones.
You traced it back to Pride and Prejudice. Yeah.
And we also see it a lot through the old 50s movies where the women especially can hurl some scathing insults.
Yeah.
Mae West was great at it. Unfortunately, I cannot take anything she says seriously with the, she's got that way of talking.
Well, you weren't supposed to. She was doing comedy. That's true. What's amazing about Mae West. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the way, and like I said, in romance especially, it's the enemies to lovers trope, which they use for when they're workplace rivals, or they met and they didn't have a meet cute because something happened and they didn't get along, and she thinks hate it. So, but I'm looking at it from the perspective of like the female led media, where it's like he'll say she's annoying,
Yeah.
and she's like, oh, he's such a jerk. And like, ironically, one example of that I do like is the Hayao Miyazaki movie Whisper of the Heart, which is one of his lesser known ones, where there's a whole scene where she's so mad at the guy who becomes the love interest that she is stomping down the street going, stupid jerk, stupid jerk, stupid jerk.
Okay, but being mad at somebody is one thing. Abuse is another. And I think because the entertainment media is, I mean, it's an abusive industry.
And like he does call her songwriting corny or something in one of their first meetings.
That's a tangible detail that can work. Annoying's one of those words. It's up there with bitch and problematic. To me, it's a word, and amazing. It's a word you use when you're too lazy to find what your actual adjective is.
And like, I think that's one of the differences between those 50s movies where these women are slinging it's so classy. And it's like,
well, they just cut to the core of what's wrong with this guy.
Oh yeah.
It's not, you're a jerk. It's, the classic Star Wars thing is scruffy looking nerf herder. Yeah.
Which again, that's very specific.
Right. First of all, it's good sass. Second of all, it is, the idea that they were railing against women being demure, because keep in mind, in the 1950s, they were coming out of World War II, where women were like, hey, we can actually do stuff.